Councillor Darby. Councillor Clow?
Just very brief, just Councillor Darby referred to that the 30-year leases were signed and it was against the advice of the staff. Well, who entered into the leases from our side of things? I mean, other staff ignored
I
other
think,
staff?
yeah.
Hey?
Yeah.
Local board.
It's
Delegated
authority.
So we can't,
Thank you.
I think we all know what we're talking about, but it's one of those ones that's a bit hard for us to discuss here. Some people know, some people have been involved, some people not. Point made, long-term leases, let's find a better governance tool to deal with them. Yeah, thank you. Let's move on to our next recommendation.
Okay, so the next area is around community loans and loan guarantees. Currently we have 18 loans outstanding with sporting organisations which are worth $11.5 million, and there are 10 loan guarantees with sports organisations to the tune of $41.4 million. And there are some certain outliers here that certainly elevate some of those figures. In terms of our assessment against those investment principles, we see that there's poor alignment. Loans, generally, there's no strategic assessment in terms of how they line up with council's outcomes that it's seeking to achieve. There is no monitoring of those outcomes. There's not a lot of transparency or consistency around who can apply for loans and loan guarantees. They seem to be on a case-by-case basis, which of course raises equity issues. Often we see that the recipients of these loans in the short term may help their financial sustainability, doesn't address fundamental problems over the long term. As part of our advice, however, we recommend that loan guarantees could remain as a contingency instrument. Now, the reason why we suggest that as opposed to loans is, of course, loans they are a cost to council. Most of these loans, 12 of the 18 are at 0%, and of course we're borrowing from banks at certainly a higher interest rate than that. These loans sit on, they appear on our bottom line, and obviously they have an impact on council's credit rating long term.
Yes, they do.
Whereas loan guarantees, we often have an asset against the guarantee, so council's protected longer term, doesn't have the same impact on our bottom line. An example we have, there's a bowling club that were loaned $10,000 over a 10-year term, so you can see how much that they're paying back. 0% interest, they're supposed to repay it by 2019, so it started in 2011, so they're paying back approximately $1,000 a year.
Take more than that off the bar.
At 0%.
It's,
Jeez,
Righty.
So the advice or the recommendation here is that, in terms of the draft sports facilities investment plan, we don't use loans as a mechanism for investment, but we keep loan guarantees and that they be used sparingly. In terms of page reference for that decision, we are on page 82.
yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions. Councillor Clow, Councillor Cooper, Mayor Golf.
Sorry, if you don't mind, to make a comment. It's just so the finance team, we have been working through these loans, trying to tidy them up. We have tidied some up. So I'll just give the endorsement for the recommendations on this page, and the next one regards rates, remissions and postponements. We believe that's very, very sound policy that we move to those recommendations.
Okay, good. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I agree we shouldn't do any more loans. I mean, we do it with things like septic tanks and we've done it with insulation, but that automatically comes off rate, so we know we're getting it back, whereas there's no other mechanism for some of these clubs. And I mean, I think I don't agree with doing the loans, but we always have this public expectation when people can't get money that the council just stumps up for just about everything. So I think we just have to be, everybody, the thing is we can do this, but then people have to be tough when it comes to people, you know, coming to us, and we can't then vote for this and then your organisation from your area comes and the local board comes and everyone comes and everybody gets their friends to vote for it. I mean, I think that's what it's about sticking to it. And I mean, it's a really tough one because there are also outcomes that we want in communities. We don't want to pay for it. We want someone else to do it because it's cheaper for us and it happens. So I don't know what we do then when we want a particular outcome in a community. You know, yeah, so that's the balance, and I don't know how we address that, but I do agree with this.
I think if we go back to Councillor Simpson's point, which I think is really good, what this is giving us is a solid and equitable framework across the region that all of these recommendations are leading us to, and then we debate against that framework on individual issues, but we are going back to a solid datum point, not debating one area against the next or our favourite club or good old friends that we've had forever. I think this puts it in a far more solid context. So, you know, we've all, I think most of us have been part of councils for a long time. We've watched this happen and we've been part of it. Now this presses the reset button, which is good. Mayor Goff.
Yeah, just a question about the 10 loan guarantees worth $41.4 million. Is that a full picture? Because we have a loan guarantee to Eden Park Trust Board of $40 million. That doesn't include that figure, I presume.
Through the chair.
Well, the other 9 loans are very small.
Through the chair, the other 9 loans are very small.
Oh, okay. It does include that figure.
Oh, that's a very good question.
It's in the report.
Okay. Thank you.
Point made and heard. Say no more. Member Wilcox and then Councillor Watson.
Yeah, so one of the things that, and the Mayor's kind of clarified for us, that actually the 10 loans are only 1.4 million, which is, well, said easy quickly, but still a lot of money. What I'm really trying to understand here is often communities come with a plan that has a social outcome as well. Have we made allowance for this in this kaupapa, or are we just saying, no, that's it? Because I know a lot of communities that were struggling have come, and it not only solves attributes the kaupapa to a sporting or active outcome, but also to a community and social outcome.
Through the chair, we consider that a lot of the mechanisms that we use consider, for example, like grants and leases. We do consider community outcomes as one of the criteria. So one of the reasons to remove loans is because we consider the purpose it serves, which is to support clubs operating and capital expenses. Those functions can be met by grant. So in those instances where the community come to the local boards or the council with a plan that address community needs, I think in those instances we would suggest that they look for other mechanisms to address their needs and use loan guarantee as a backup measure when all the other financial resources have been exhausted.
Okay, thank you. And further to what Councillor Close kind of given me some reassurance that we're trying to tidy up these loans. Do we have any defaulters that we should be closing it on now?
Through the chair, I don't think we've reached default point. However, I would say that there are several that are probably less than consistent in their repayment of the loans.
Thank you.
And I think that will come up in Councillor Close committee. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you. I understand the drive for consistency here and what could be described as good practice, but in terms of public perception, I know we're drawing a distinction between loans and guarantees and grants, but I would say that in terms of grants, for instance, you know, if you have someone like Yachting New Zealand, for instance, coming along for a $3 million grant, and someone else getting knocked out for a a loan guarantee, there seems to be an inherent inequity in that where big sums of money are getting given out, which are gifts, other community groups struggling to not even get a grant but trying to find some other mechanism. I just think you'd have to be very careful in terms of how the public might view some very generous grants to some organisations and coming down hard on others who are trying to struggle by. I can see problems there.
Yeah, hopefully this might kind of flatten out those inconsistencies, councillor. They've certainly existed in the past. Shall we move on to rates remission and postponement?
So these rates, remissions and postponement schemes are again carry over from the legacy councils. They were either granted by the Auckland Regional Council, Franklin District Council, North Shore or the Rodney District Council, and many have been in place for a number of years. The total quantum in terms of rates, remissions to sports organisations in the current financial year is $320,000. We also have a postponement scheme that was in place with Manukau City Council. There are 2 agreements under that, and the amount of postponement sitting there is approximately $800,000 in total. If I go into those a little bit further by way of example, the largest rates remission in the sports area is with the North Shore Golf Club. So their remission was $76,412 in this financial year. And then when we look at the return that golf club made to the Charities Commission, and we have a look at their financial status, we see that they have accumulated assets worth $8.4 million. They have been selling land progressively in 2012, 2013, 2015, and have built up a reasonably, if we would look at from a financial sustainability perspective, we would say that they look very sound. If we turn to the 2 postponement schemes, we have, again, these are 2 golf clubs. The first of which was Pakuranga, and their postponement works out to be approximately $57,000 each year. Then we look at their financial returns, and they sold off a reasonably substantial piece of land, made $4.5 million. Thankfully, they prorated a payment to council of approximately, I think it was $40,000 to offset that. However, the balance outstanding on that piece of land is reasonably substantial. The same would apply to the other recipient of postponements, which is the Royal Auckland Golf Club. If we look at their current balance sheet, they have $13 million in accumulated assets. They have been actively going through or according to their statement, they have an intention of making long-term land sales, and of course they merged with the Grange golf course to allow them to do so. So part of the rationale for having this postponement scheme in Manukau was to really offset the rateable value of the land that is owned by a recognised sports club for sports that is significantly attributable to potential residential development by subdivision. Now, it would imply the fact that they are selling off land for subdivision that they may no longer qualify for that. We suggest that there's poor alignment between these rates, remissions and postponement schemes. Again, from the previous examples, there could be a need for grants to be allocated to these sporting organisations, but we would have clear line of sight in terms of the outcomes that we thought that they were delivering. So again, the recommendation is that we remove both rates, remissions and postponements as an investment type in the investment plan.
So I guess the caveat on this, seeing that this is a public meeting, these are used as examples. Should anyone from those golf clubs be watching this live streaming, that we're not going to go rushing straight in and deal to the golf clubs. I think we just need to make that sure. Golf, we're not going to deal to them straight away. I think these are sensible examples, however, they're illustrating the urgent need to deal with these. I think we just need to put that in context. Thank you for those very good examples. We'll let him go first. Magog.
Thank you. While I think most of us would agree that we shouldn't move into this sort of advancing of money to groups in future, those examples sort of are incredibly irritating, that we are subsidising organisations that clearly don't need that subsidy at all. So to what extent can this recommendation be applied retrospectively to those organisations currently getting postponement or remission?
I think we might. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, so I might step in and suggest that our chair and deputy chair of finance pick this one up with you, and that issue be brought to finance for their consideration, because it is a little bit unfair to have, in good faith, we asked the staff to illustrate with examples, and this has come as an illustrative example, but I don't think we can quickly move to reduce their rates. Maybe work is already underway. Let's check. Is
Just
work already underway?
through the chair, we have a requirement under the Local Government Act to review these rates postponements and remission schemes every 5 years. So the intent is to do that as part of the next LTP process.
Great. So that'll be coming through finance.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Okay. I've got Councillor Quacks, Councillor Walker, Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, the Pakuranga Golf, the country club, what's the zoning on that?
Councillor, I understand where your questions are coming from. I am going to be tough, though. We have used these as illustrative examples. This is a hold on, Councillor. I'll chair. Thank you. We're using this as an example of the issues that we've raised. The review is going to be part of the LTP for the individual clubs involved. The point we're making here is, are we going to agree that remissions and postponements are part or not of this process? So neither do we have the right staff here to talk about zoning issues, nor are we going to talk about individual examples. So the question needs to relate to the report.
Okay, well, Madam Chair, the issue's already been raised by the officials.
As an illustrative example?
As an example, and the example was about the land being sold. The land that was sold was actually sold for sports fields, for a continuation of sports fields to a local school in the area because of the lack of their sports fields they have right now. So they will continue to be used as sports fields, and quite frankly, golf courses such as this would quickly go out of business if they are forced to. That's why they had to sell some land in the first place, because there's a drop in membership in the golf courses right across the city, right across the country, I would suggest. And so I think this is quite a bad, this Pakuranga case is quite a poor example, actually, because this is actually zoned residential. And that's why they're being charged such high rates. They're being charged residential rates on a sports facility.